All right, hello, and welcome to this episode where we're going to do an OCD and anxiety FAQ, or frequently asked question. And today's question is going to be about differentiating intrusive thoughts versus rumination. So I'm going to read that question here in just a second, and then we'll dive in. But real quick, if you could please help us out by liking and subscribing, as well as leaving a comment or a nice review on iTunes and Spotify, I would really appreciate it, as it helps the show and get this information to more and more people. Also, if you're looking for help and support, we have some links right down in the notes. Please check them out or head over to restoredminds.com, and you can also complete an application. So let's go ahead and dive into today's question. So this is a great question, so I'm going to go ahead and read it here for a second. Okay, so the question reads, how do you know what the initial thought is versus ruminating? And it says, I'm trying to stop my main safety behavior, which is ruminating, but don't want to begin thought suppression instead. Guess I'm trying to figure out where it all blends together so I don't go down the rabbit hole without realizing it. So, great question. So the initial thought, right? So let's kind of differentiate the two first, and we'll talk a little bit of the nuances here. The initial thought is the thought that just kind of pops up into your conscious awareness, right? Generally, we're looking for those what if thoughts, but it's not always a what if thought. It could be a direct comment. It could be an image. It could be, so one of the problems is oftentimes we ruminate about this process, right? We try to let me figure it out perfectly so that I know I'm doing it perfectly and doing it right. And that often becomes counterproductive. And it sounds like a little bit of that is going on in this question. But I just want to be clear on the differentiation. The initial intrusive thought is the thought that pops up. It just pops into the mind, right? The rumination is to ruminate, it comes from that word is rooted in the how a cow or a hooved animal will eat grass, swallow it and throw it up, right? And chew on it more, right? And swallow it and throw it up to digest it better, right? So think of you chewing and throwing up a thought again and again and again and again. That's to ruminate. I know, not always the most pleasant visual, but it's, just kind of how I tend to describe it. Because that's what happens. You're just mulling it over again and again and again. Why did I have that thought? What does it mean? This, and this. It's your attempt to resolve, figure out, or get rid of the thought. So rumination is, in fact, an act of thought suppression because you're trying to not have it. Right? You're trying to figure out why you had it so you don't have it again, or what it means, or this, that, and the other. So when it comes to how to not do that, right? I mean, I think the AAA response is the best technique that obviously I know for that. And so you can get started with that by, again, in the book. We have a little link down in the notes. There's a great entry point to it. Obviously, TBC, we go in depth into that, or Taking Back Control. So the 12-week program, and the telling yourself not to ruminate is not a good focus, in my opinion, because if it was easy to tell someone not to ruminate, it's literally I would make an episode that just says, don't ruminate, right? And that should resolve everything. It's telling yourself not to engage in an unhealthy behavior that has certain, reward centers that activate, the dopamine response through rumination because it calms down your anxiety a bit. It's similar to telling someone who wrestles with alcohol not to drink, right? It's not like you haven't thought of that before, right? This is why shifting consciousness, the first step, right? And I talk about that in chapter 6. But this is why implementing these tools from a higher level of consciousness is so important, right? And then once we understand that shift in consciousness, then it's what do we do instead? And that's what really more the AAA response is about moving to a solution as opposed to moving away from a problem. And most of the time in life, when you move towards a solution, right, it just is going to produce better results, right? It's like I can't help but think about like a client I once worked with who, was like asking me questions like, how do I not cheat on my wife, right? That's such a poor frame of mind for a marriage, right? As opposed to like, how do I treat my wife in a more loving way? How do I express love, right? This kind of stuff. When you move in that direction, it's just going to be a better result than trying to not move in a bad direction, right? Same principle. It's like, how do I not eat fast food if I'm trying to lose weight versus how do I like really embody a healthy diet, right? Like, what does that look like? Moving towards a solution is always a better approach in my experience. And so that's why with this question, it's like, yes, it's important to differentiate, but then instead of saying, I don't want to ruminate, we need to implement a solution, and ideally from a higher level of consciousness. So hope that was helpful, and I hope that made sense. Obviously, if you guys have any FAQs or questions that you'd like to submit for potentially future episodes, we have a little link down in the notes where you can do that. And so just click that. You can submit a question. We'll consider it for a future episode. And with that said, hope you guys have a great week. And if you're looking for support, please check out restoredminds.com. And then we have several resources for you to get started. All right. See you guys soon. Hey there. So if you enjoyed that video, we've linked up a few more videos that we think you'd find helpful as well. And if you have found this helpful, we'd really appreciate your support by liking and subscribing. And if you're looking for help and guidance, please check out restoredminds.com as we have several options for you to get started. See you guys soon.